So I guess just to jump right into it,
Sure.
uh, you've done everything from Broadway to writing and producing, but how do you describe what you do and why you do it?
Well, the answer to that question is very different today than it would have been 2 years ago. Um, do you want me to answer as like 2 years ago Jonah, who's doing entertainment-y stuff all the time, or as current Jonah, who's doing Jewish stuff all the time?
I would love if you could give both perspectives.
Sure. I mean, the only way to describe really my entertainment career is like multi-hyphenate is the word they use in the industry, meaning, actor hyphen director hyphen writer hyphen producer. Um, I have a very ADHD entertainment career. I've been sort of blessed and cursed to be pretty good at a lot of things in entertainment, like master of none, but like really good at a bunch. So I've and because I'm a ADHD kind of guy, I've often like jumped from thing to thing to thing because I enjoy all of them and I have a hard time picking one. And so I've been able to act in a lot of arenas. I've written for a lot of different kind of things. I've directed and produced in different mediums. I have done, musical arrangements and musical directing and singing and all of that stuff. So multi-hyphenate, entertainment jack of all trades. In later years, I've tried to hone in a little bit more, like focusing more really on acting, writing, and a little bit of producing on the side. And now I gotta say, lately, it's really even more just like acting and a little bit of producing. But that all changed starting October 7th. I was starring in a play when October 7th happened, and that I did. I've done some voiceover stuff, and I did a little role in a movie since then. But that was like my last really big entertainment thing. I basically put all of my energy from that day forward into Jewish advocacy. Not just because I that's where I wanted to put my energy, and that's where I found myself feeling pulled to spend my time, and that's what was occupying the space in my brain. I didn't want to do other stuff. It felt much less important to me and very sort of needlessly self-centered almost. Like, who gives a shit if I book some part in some TV show when I can be helping people navigate this terrible moment and like helping the Jewish people in this historic moment that we're facing right now when we really need to be all hands on deck and active. So now the way I would describe myself is I'm a podcast creator and host. I am a public speaker, and I'm a Jewish advocate and a bridge builder between communities. And, somewhat, it sounds sort of hoity-toity to say, but a little bit of like a public intellectual. I mean, I like to try to think things out loud and give people stuff to think about. I'm not sure how else to describe that, but that's sort of what I do now.
That's so beautiful and inspiring that you were able to sort of pivot after October 7th.
It wasn't
How
easy. It was a trick. It was a hard moment to sort of decide to like let go a bit of what I'd been pursuing for almost 20 years and do this other thing. But it's certainly paid dividends in fulfillment and in utility to others.
Yeah, it's very beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you remember a specific moment or experience that made you realize that your Jewishness wasn't just a part of your heritage, but something that you have to actively speak up for?
What a good question. I don't know that there's a specific moment, but I do know that there was, a long span in my life where that was not really the case. Like I've never been shy about being Jewish or not proud. Like I've always been proud of being Jewish. It's always been intrinsic to who I am. But it definitely wasn't until, I don't know, the last 5 or so years when I started to really see the need to be an advocate and to be publicly Jewish and sort of modeling that. I don't know that there was a specific moment per se, but I do know that in 2021, when there was violence between Gaza and Israel, over like the excuse was this like Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood situation, this Balagan. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
But that was like the first time that I meaningfully talked about like that conflict, like the Israel situation and like the situation for Jews online in a public way, in like a significant way. And when I did that and saw that, oh, this is useful to people, I'm like, oh, I actually am pretty well informed on this stuff. That sort of began my process of being like, I want to be really informed on this stuff, and started like really educating myself and trying to speak more and listen more and try to understand people. So I would say that was definitely a big turning point, if not like a moment in my journey.
Beautiful. And then in terms of having those conversations, what role do you think storytelling plays in strengthening Jewish identity and community, especially among young adults?
I don't know that I would say storytelling specifically plays, an important role in any of this, as much as it is like digestible conveying of information, and for in certain uh, moments and topics and situations, storytelling is a useful means of communication. But I don't know that I necessarily approach like anything I do really as storytelling. Um, I think of it more as what is the best way to convey this message? And generally, if it's something, look, like authenticity and honesty are key. And a lot of the ways into that is often through personal stories. For example, like in this week's episode of my podcast, like my opening comes from it's one of my more storytelling-y monologues I've ever done, because it's all about something that happened to me and the experience that I went through going on March of the Living with an organization called Shiraka. And I think, there's a great emotional connection that becomes available when you speak from the heart about something you've been through. I think there's something very vulnerable and inviting about that for people that allows a message to really hit. But then I've also had monologues that didn't necessarily come from a story, but were, well crafted and well told. So you could say that they have a storytelling element to them, but it's not like I said, I've been like, how am I going to tell this piece of information as a story? Do you know what I mean? If that makes sense.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I would follow that question up with like, there are a ton of really difficult conversations being had on college campuses. I've had a lot of really tough conversations with people who don't share my beliefs and values. And I know that a lot of students, especially Jewish students, really want to engage in those conversations in a respectful, peaceful manner. And do you have any advice for those students about how to do that in a way that's productive?
Absolutely. So this is an organic plug for the show. One of my early episodes is called The Four C's of Difficult Conversations. So I'm not going to give you that whole monologue, but I do break down how to have hard conversations with people you disagree with. You said that you're trying to talk with people of different beliefs and different values. Those are two different things. And I think you're going to have a lot more success trying to have a conversation with someone who has different beliefs than somebody who has different values. You can still do both. One is just a lot harder. Being able to hold a conversation with someone who has different values than you requires a lot of self-control, a lot of openness. I mean, I'll give you the four C's because they're important. Like one of them is calm. If you're going to come to these conversations, they have to be dispassionate. There has to be a remove. It's just, it doesn't go anywhere if you come from a place of emotion. It has to really be kind of chill. You have to be curious. You have to be genuinely wanting to hear what the other person has to say. And even if it's not genuine, you got to fake it till you make it. You cannot go into a conversation being like, I'm going to change this person's mind today. People don't want to have their minds changed. People like thinking that they're right. What you need to be there to do is listen, trying to understand where this person's coming from, get them to understand where you're coming from, and then leave it at that. You can't put your hand into someone's brain and mush it around. All you can do is give them stuff to think about and leave them. The other one I'd say is compassion. So you wanna really be taking in what they're saying, not thinking about the next thing you're gonna say, not dismissing what they say, like really trying to honor where they're coming from. And then the last one's camaraderie. Like these conversations, I mean, I think about conversations that I have now with people in my extended family who I like disagree with politically. And we're now at the point where like we can laugh with each other about it because we love each other and that comes first. And we know we disagree on this stuff. And so we can make fun of each other about it. You know, like I can make fun of them for being Republicans and they can make fun of me for being a Democrat. And well, I don't know where anybody is right now, by the way, but historically speaking, and we can have a good time with it, and not know like we're not going to solve the Middle East crisis at the coffee table right now. So it's like let's all chill out and bring the stakes down. The last thing I'll say about it is it takes two to tango. So you're only going to get so far, so meaningful of a conversation if somebody else wants to also have a meaningful conversation. If somebody is showing up, you know, and they're not following the 4Cs, like it's not going to go well for you. Like you can do your best, but it's like it's probably not going to be a desirable outcome, and it's going to take, you know, Buddha level of restraint and calm on your part to get through it. If they're shutting down, if they're deflecting, if they're not honoring you, if they don't care what you have to say, if they're emotional, like you got to really be a rock. So it's hard. So I would say, you know, let the first step be choosing wisely who you're going to try to engage with. Like you don't want to be engaging with the person who's yelling "gas the Jews" in your face. Like let's wait on that conversation. Let's start with the person who has the same values as you, who cares about, you know, liberal values, let's call them, but has the wrong information or the wrong beliefs or different beliefs, and it's something that you can talk about and consider each other and disagree with and have a calm conversation about.
Thank you for summing that up. That was so powerful for me. And I think that all the students listening will really benefit from that,
Great.
especially the part about listening to others and going into these conversations calmly.
Yeah, I think if you take away one thing, it's don't try to change somebody's mind at the start of the conversation. Yeah, that's a losing formula.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that we are both part of a generation that is kind of redefining what being Jewish in the public eye means. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, you know, your thoughts on that, what that kind of looks like to you today, and what the future of that holds.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you. I think we're definitely leading the way on being, you know, loud, proud, public, and Jewish. It can look a lot of different ways. And, you know, it's interesting. Sorry, it comes up all the time, but on the pod, on this episode this week, this conversation sort of came up with my guest, Jason Robert Brown. And his perspective was, look, some people are built to be leaders and some aren't. And it's okay to not be a leader. It's okay to be afraid to wear your Star of David. You don't have to advertise it. And I sort of agree with him and I sort of don't. I don't see how we're going to normalize Jews being equal with everyone else and taking up the same amount of space as everyone else if we don't take up the same amount of space as everyone else. And so I don't know anyone else who's like hiding markers of their identity because they are afraid to take up space. I'm sure there are, but generally speaking, certainly not when it comes to like an ethnicity or you know, a religious group. So I again, there are different ways to show up. Not everybody has to be blinged out in Stars of David, but it's like we have to be able to at least, like, if you see something, say something. Like there has to be a zero tolerance policy for anti-Jew bigotry and anti-Jew racism wherever you are, whether it's work, school, family, whatever. We can't let those things slide anymore. It's not cool. And it's hard for people to recognize. A lot of people don't know what anti-Jew bigotry in 2025 looks like, especially from the left. They don't understand the double standard or the exclusion or the misrepresentation of what Jews are. Everybody knows what a Nazi looks like, but not a lot of people know what this other stuff looks like. So it's important we call it out. And then I always like to say, like, you don't need to start a podcast or quit your job and become an advocate or whatever to make a difference here. It's about what can you do in your circle, in your job. And it's just about like not being afraid, even more so than it is like I need to be an out front leader. Like I'll get emails and messages from people who listen to the show and have heard me say this kind of thing. And they're like, because you were in my head when I was at work and we got this, I teach preschool and we got this calendar thing and it had a big thing for Christmas and like nothing for Hanukkah. And I reached out to the makers of the calendar. I said, there should be a Hanukkah thing there because I felt empowered. And then they added a Hanukkah thing. I'm like, that's it. I'm like, I was super proud of this person. That was great. And like, she didn't have to, go on television and yell about it. She just was like, I see something. I'm going to say something and I'm going to advocate for myself because we deserve to be in here also. That's what it needs to look like. And then you can let sort of like the leaders be the leaders. We're not all going to be leaders. That's just life. But everybody has to feel a responsibility to be a part of this movement and not just be like, thanks for representing me. I'm going to keep doing exactly what I've been doing and hope you take care of it.
I could not agree more. I really do think that we need to be taking up space, especially right now. And that brings me to like, what advice do you have for Jewish students on campuses and even just young Jews out in the world that really want to take up that space, but might be afraid in this current moment?
So something I'm learning, and it's funny, like this has been my 2 weeks randomly of like learning about Jewish college student leaders. Like I just interviewed two for my podcast. I just spoke at an event put on by student leaders at UCLA. I'm talking to you. And like, what I would say to Jewish students is like, you have amazing leaders on your campuses. They're doing the work already, and you just have to find them. I mean, they're doing it. I was reading an article about, somebody sent me an article about like the Technical University of Toronto or something, like UTM, something like rampant anti-Semitism, not a big Jewish community, but like there's a handful of Jewish leaders there who are like doing their thing and pushing back. And if you're a Jew on that campus, you have chevre, like you have somewhere to go and people to follow. And I know that that's true. I know there are a lot of organizations that are helping students, like Students Supporting Israel and Israel on Campus Coalition and Stand With Us and Hillel and Chabad. There's like all these places of support. So they exist. And I would say just like find that community, find those leaders. And then if you feel inspired to do more and take on more of a role, great, do that. But first, just like find your people, find the community. I know they exist. I know that there are amazing leaders in place already for you to follow. And if you're, a young Jew who's not in school and you don't have that opportunity, find the organizations in the place that you live. Find your Jewish Federation, find your whatevers, and find that community, because there is what I call, I'm borrowing it from Congressman Richie Torres, a Jewish renaissance happening of Jews, taking space and leading and building, and it's happening all around us. So you just got to just join in the fun.
I love that. That really was my source of strength as a student, especially after I testified and that was so public. I really did rely on that community, especially at Chabad at Tulane.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all I have. I really, really appreciate you doing this. I
My
think this is
pleasure.
so inspiring for so many students around the world, and beyond honored to have you as part of our OCU Chronicle.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody will, reach out on social media. I answer all my messages at Jonah Platt. Would love to connect. Check out the podcast, Being Jewish, and message me on that. And thank you so much for having me.